This guide is going to cover Lucid on both the normal and hard difficulties, leaving out easy because it's not actually a step in progression. So let's cover some basic information before getting into her actual attacks. First of all, you should probably notice that she has 10 health bars. And no, it's not because she's an Australian spider chilling in your bathroom. Instead, it's actually tied to a mechanic that I'll later go over in the attack section. The Lucid fight is broken up into 2 phases, or 3 phases if you're on hard mode. It's a very chip damage heavy fight, meaning that any kind of healing you have, whether it be lifesteal, passive regeneration, or healing familiars, is going to get a little more value in here than your average boss fight. Now let's get into the actual attacks, starting with her summons, most notably the Golems. Now these things do a few things. First, they act as a wall. They will physically block your movement, and if you try to go over them, whether it be with a jump or some kind of teleport, they are going to do 70% of your life for every one that you pass over, which you might be able to get away with passing through one. Any more than that, you're going to die. It's for that reason that it's rather important to try to keep them down as much as you can. Now this is going to be easier said than done for some classes. One of the main things you need to worry about from the Golems is them being summoned into the map. If they hit you, it does 30% of your life in damage, but that's not the most dangerous part. If a Golem summons in on you and you just stay in place, you're going to get killed because it's going to attack you repeatedly, which is one of the reasons why it's important to keep them down, because you actually need room to get out of the way and dodge other attacks, so you shouldn't let too many Golems get on the screen at once. So let's get into the next summon that is one of the biggest reasons of why you shouldn't let Golems build up in the first place. That is Lucid's Dragon. You'll see the message "Lucid summoned a powerful monster" appear at the top of your screen when the dragon is summoned, and it will appear on either the far left or the far right side of the map. When the dragon flies down, and after a short delay, it's going to fire a green beam of fire across the entire map. The only 2 safe spots are going to be up above the beam or behind the dragon's mouth. Keep in mind that every class has the ability to socket Blink into their V matrix, giving them an ability that will allow them to dodge the laser beam without needing to go to the left or the right. Some classes even have a mechanic like this built in. Now if you notice, I put a timer down here at the bottom of the screen. That was the time from the message disappearing to the dragon actually landing and starting its fire breath. That means that when you see the message disappear and you plan on using Blink or whatever hover mechanic you have, you should wait about 4 seconds, that way you don't end up falling into the fire breath by having your Blink end early. And just know that there are a lot of messages that pop up at the top of your screen. Don't go thinking that every one is the dragon. You need to be careful and actually read what the messages say, because one of the biggest reasons you will die in Lucid is not paying attention to the messages and getting surprised by a big green beam of fire and you die. The next summon of Lucid's is this Toadstool. On normal mode, she'll only summon 1, but on hard mode, she'll summon 2. Nightmare mushrooms walk forward slowly, and if you touch them, you take 50% of your HP and damage. One difference between these and the Golems is that you can actually safely teleport through these or jump over them. But should any Golems be in your way, you will still take damage from the Golems. The next summon of Lucid's are the butterflies. There are 2 different types. There are the ones that move around and actually fire little bullets at you. These deal 20% damage if they touch you. Not very threatening by themselves, but they can actually cause you to die combined with other mechanics. Now there's nothing you can do about those butterflies, but the other butterflies, the blue glowing ones you see in the background here, these you can do something about, and you should. This is actually where Lucid's 10 health bars come into play. For every health bar of Lucid's that you take down, you gain a charge on both the statues on the left and the right, and they share their charges. Their charges are indicated by the little diamonds underneath them. When they look orange like this, that means they're holding charges, and you activate it by holding the interact/harvest key on your keyboard. And just as with the Damien altar, you can move around and duck while using this, if you have to. You can also use this while you're standing behind the dragon's head while it's using its fire breath attack. When successfully interacted with, the statue wipes out every background butterfly, preventing the attack they would have done otherwise if they successfully built up enough. And just so you know, that attack looks like this. Every butterfly on the screen will split into 3 smaller butterflies, home in on the player, and do 20% HP damage each, and that is a lot if you stand still, but you can dodge it by moving around or using iframes. Now we can cover her non-summon attack, starting with her Crescent beams. This attack will be quite telegraphed by Lucid going up into the air and then glowing white. After that short animation, Crescent blades are going to come out in a radial pattern in random directions and in various sizes. Now the sizes all do the same damage, they are just a little bit harder to dodge when they're larger. Now when you see her casting the animation, get some space. Make sure you're not directly on top of her so you don't get shotgunned by a bunch of beams at the same time. Multiple will deal damage to you, and if you run along with them, they can continuously deal damage to you every half a second, which can be quite dangerous, especially on phase 2 where the blades do even more damage than the 30% they do in phase 1. The next attack are these flash flowers that you see spawning across your screen. This is a very simple attack. They'll spawn all over the place, and if you're standing on them when they detonate, if you want to call them that, you'll take 30% of your HP and damage. And just like the Crescents, it's possible to take damage from multiple of them at the same time. Sometimes Lucid will also teleport you to a random position on the map, so if you leave a forest of golems alive, you might just find yourself in a bad position. And last, but certainly not least, is her time bomb. Should you hear this very relaxing sound, you have a time bomb on you. When it detonates, it deals 180% damage split among all players standing on top of you. Solo players need to be standing on one of these bubbles. These bubbles act as a player, but in the case that you can't get to one of the bubbles, you need to rely on an iframe. If you don't have that, well, at least you start with 10 lives. And with that, you now know all of the attacks and summons that Phase 1 Lucid has. But there's one more thing you don't know about. Every 25% of Lucid's HP she loses, she starts casting her abilities more frequently, indicated by these messages on screen. Now that we're in Phase 2, some attacks are shared. Time Bomb is the exact same. Crescent Blades move faster and now deal 51% damage. And the Butterflies do the same damage with their little bullets, but they attack a little bit faster. Both the Golems and the Dragon make a return in this phase as well, but they're quite a bit different than they are in Phase 1. But first, let's cover the arena because it changed a lot. It's now a series of platforms floating in the air. The statues are back on slightly different levels this time, and the mechanic in which you use them is still the exact same as Phase 1. Time bombs can still happen, and in fact, getting to the bubbles is actually a little bit easier. The downside is with the more aggressive background butterflies firing their little bullets, it's quite a bit easier to take chip damage and still die to even the 90% damage. The dragon is still going to warn you with the same message at the top of your screen. When it comes down, it's going to fire a sweeping beam going up and down the map, with the topmost and bottommost platforms being safe from its fire breath. And just as you saw me do there, you can actually use the statue while above it like on this platform, which makes the dragon a pretty good opportunity to clear butterfly stacks. However, the platform I was standing on to do this can be rather risky to stand on. You see, the golem summons in this phase no longer act as walls, and they don't have the thing where if you jump over them you take damage. When summoned, they now destroy platforms, which is why I usually stand on the top rightmost platform. It dodges the fire breath and can't be broken. The one downside is if other attacks are happening, you have very little room to dodge. Alternatively, you can just use blink again to be safe. And one thing you should know about the map is that if you go out of bounds, aka down the bottom where there's no platforms, you get teleported back up. In normal and easy difficulty, nothing happens except the teleport. In hard mode, you're going to take 70% HP damage. So while you can get away with it on normal and easy, I would recommend avoiding it at all costs and learn the fight properly for all difficulties. Next, her two powerful attacks, possibly the most defining features of Phase 2. Like the dragon, you'll be warned with a message at the top of your screen. A message reading, Lucid is about to use a powerful attack. She disappears before doing it, and she's intangible the entire time while performing the attack. She'll reappear afterwards and be able to be attacked as normal. First, let's cover the laser attack. She's going to disappear and then show up in the background of the map. Lasers will lock onto the player rapidly. If in a group, each player dodges their own lasers and you don't have to worry about other people's. I find the best thing to do is dodge it rather calmly with small movements. Of course, it's not always possible, so just do what you have to do. The lasers do 34% damage in normal and easy and 51% HP damage in hard. For Lucid's second powerful attack, she's going to show up in the middle of the map and rotate around clockwise. Her goal here is simple: do touch damage to the player, which can be very easily dodged by standing above up here where I am or behind either the left or the right statues, which once again is a good time to cleanse the butterflies. The touch damage is going to do 30% in easy, 50% in normal, and 100% of your HP in hard. Should you fail to cleanse the butterflies and you get overwhelmed by them, their attack is a little bit different in Phase 2. Platforms will disappear and 4 butterflies will appear in the corners. The 4 butterflies in Lucid then fire projectiles out where you will need to float around and dodge them like a bullet hell. In easy and normal, these are going to do 51% HP damage, but in hard mode, all it takes is one of these to kill you. And yes, the same HP thresholds that speed up her spellcasting still apply to Phase 2. That means that Phase 1 and 2 are done, and if you're on normal or easy mode, you're done the fight, but if you're on the hard difficulty, you now have Phase 3. The good news is Phase 3 has no mechanics. But there's bad news. Phase 3 is a strict DPS check. You either meet a certain damage number in a 45-second window, or you fail the fight. No second chances, you're done. With 11 trillion HP to get through and a very small DPS window all things considered, this can be a rather difficult thing to overcome solo. Which brings us to the Mulung Dojo. The training grounds here gives you access to a customizable training dummy that will let you test exactly how much damage you can do to Lucid without needing to waste your time going through 2 phases of nonsense to even see if you have what it takes. In the dummy settings, make sure it's set to a boss, that it has 300 defense, that it resists elemental damage, that it's level 230, and that its arcane power is set to 360. Now you can actually summon the dummy, and then you can open up your battle analysis, preferably with a hotkey, that way you can actually track the time properly, and then time yourself attacking it. Make sure to stop at 40 seconds, but don't judge it off 40 seconds here exactly, because one, she goes invincible for a few seconds on the last bar. It's also likely better to underestimate the time by a little bit to make sure you actually have clearance time. Remember that the fog training grounds is going to be a stress-free environment. When you're actually doing hard lucid and you know you just might be barely making the cut, you are going to be more likely to make mistakes, because that's just how people are. And the more complicated your class's burst is, well, the more likely you are to make mistakes just naturally anyway. And again, that is going to be a high stress situation, because if you fail the burst phase, well, you fail the fight. So it's definitely better to have a little bit of wiggle room, leaving room for maybe a couple mistakes here and there. As for tips, when you're fighting Lucid in phase 2 and you're about to use your bind, I personally wait until she just does a powerful attack and just gets back from it. That way she's just a bit less likely to do one the moment the bind ends, but it's not impossible. Rope lift can potentially save you from falling into the bottom in hard mode and save you from taking damage. Just before entering phase 3 in hard mode, sit around and let your cooldowns come back, because if you go in without your burst, you're probably not going to succeed unless you're way overgeared for the fight. But that was probably obvious. And lastly, to do with hard mode phase 3, again, if you have really long duration skills, pop them well before the 45-second timer. That way you have more than enough time to pop your other abilities. Basically anything that lasts longer than like 50 seconds is probably good to be popped a little bit in advance. And that's everything. So good luck to you with the Lucid fight. Thank you for watching. Thank you to my members and my patrons for supporting me as always, and I'll see you in the next one.